No, no, no. I think we're good. So I think we're good to go. So I'm going to call this meeting to order. Um, so welcome to this evening's Committee of Adjustment meeting. Members of the public, applicants, agents, and staff may be participating this evening either in person or virtually via Zoom. For those attending via Zoom, please note that it is our standard practice for members of the public to have their cameras off and microphones muted until it is time for that person to speak. Township staff can assist with muting microphones. If you require assistance, please use the chat function and ask staff. I am also pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where a recording of this meeting will be available. Note that the Township does not have the ability to edit the live stream or recorded versions of the meeting. Public meetings have been called and notice circulated in accordance with the Planning Act with respect to applications for minor variance and or consent. The purpose of public meetings are to inform and provide the public with an opportunity to ask questions and express views with respect to the applications. The format of the public meeting is as follows. Township staff will explain the purpose of the application and report all correspondence received. Next, the applicant will present any further relevant information. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal, and then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And next, members of the committee will be given an opportunity to ask questions for clarification of the application. After all comments have been received, the committee will consider the application with due regard to the presentations and views expressed this evening. The committee will then do one of three things. 1, approve the application. 2, deny the application. Or 3, defer the application pending receipt of additional information. Specified persons who have provided oral submissions or written objections, but disagree with the committee's decision on an application may appeal a decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal as entitled under the Planning Act. The deadline for an appeal of consent applications is 20 days within the giving of the notice, and for minor variances within 20 days of the decision date. When commenting on an application, please give your full name and address for the minutes. Please note that the names and addresses of those individuals who speak at this meeting will appear within the meeting minutes, which are public documents. If you wish to receive a copy of the decision, please leave your name and address with the township staff. So I'm going to go on in our agenda. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from the committee? Seeing as there's none, I'm going to call for a motion for the adoption of minutes. So I have a motion before me, moved by member Bossy, second by member Hiles, that the minutes of the September 19th, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting be adopted as printed and distributed. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. So moving on to agenda item number D. Would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for agenda item D1, which is an application for consent identified as B01-23.
Thank you, Chair. So the first application this evening is consent application B01-23 for the lands located at 4050 Wainman Line. Here we have a key map showing the subject property in red. It is located just south of the intersection of Division Road and Wainman Line within the Marchmont Bass Lake settlement area. The 2022 aerial imagery, you can see the subject lands outlined in red. They are surrounded by residential and rural residential lands. As mentioned, the lands are located within the settlement area of Marchmont Bass Lake. The proposal is to sever the property approximately in half to create one new residential lot with one retained for a total of 2 residential lots. This application, as the committee may recall, was deferred back in May, pending the receipt of a lot grading plan, just due to some topography challenges that the committee identified having issues with access and the location for building and septic envelopes on the property. Since that time, the applicant has submitted a lot grading plan per the deferral, and it was peer reviewed by the township's consulting engineer. Just to refresh the committee's memory, here we have the severance sketch. The retained lands are shown in yellow, the severed lands in green. Both of them exceed and or comply with the minimum required lot area and frontage of the R1 zone that is applied to them. Just some site photos of the property, again, just showing that ravine-like topography, which the lot grading plan did sufficiently address. So here is that preliminary lot grading plan that the applicants did have commissioned. You can see the entrance location here. It is proposed to go up along the northern side. A proposed building envelope, septic envelopes, and the well. So the applicant did demonstrate that the lands, both the retained and severed, are capable of accommodating development appropriately in accordance with the township standards. As mentioned, the consulting engineer did review that as well. So as explained within the staff report, township staff do generally concur with the opinion of Mr. Morgan and Ms. Mills with the overall policy direction of encouraging development within rural settlement areas, and the policies would permit private services as proposed. The lot grading plan requested by the committee has been prepared and peer reviewed by the township's consulting engineer, and those previous concerns have now been addressed. There were no objections from any internal departments, and the Planning and Development Department has no objections to the provisional approval of the application this evening, subject to the recommended conditions, which are pretty standard for this type of development, being the preparation of a draft reference plan, a copy of the in preparation draft deed for review, taxes paid in full up to the date of request for the consent certificate, parkland dedication of 5%. Any fees and disbursements would be the responsibility of the applicant, and that the applicant would have 2 years to satisfy these conditions. So that wraps up my presentation for the file. I do believe that the applicant's agent is in attendance this evening. I would just remind the committee that this is not a public meeting, but the applicant may want to make some comments if the committee would allow it.
No problem. Thank you very much. Mr. Morgan, I see you're here. Do you or the applicant have anything further to add to the application?
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I do not have anything to add to Brad's presentation. I'll just stay tuned here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay. So as township staff discussed, this is not a public portion of the meeting, so there'll be no comments from the public. So do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on this application? Seeing as there's none and there's no further discussion, I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion before me identified as Committee of or COA 2023-46, moved by Member Hiles, second by Member Kish, that staff report D23-026 be received, and that the matter of consent application B-01-23, the application be provisionally approved subject to the recommended conditions included as attachment 6 to staff report D23-026. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor? We are carried. Thank you. So that concludes that application. So it's closed. So you are free to stay for the remainder of the meeting or leave as you wish. So we're going to move on in our agenda. So would township staff briefly introduce the application and report on any written response to the notice circulated for a new application identified as our agenda item E1, which is an application for minor variance identified as A-14-23.
Thank you, Chair. This application, minor variance A-14-23, is for lands located at 3231 Crescent Bay Road. Here we have a key map showing the location of the subject property, again in red, on the western shore of Lake Couchiching, just north of Goldstein Road. about halfway along Crescent Bay Road. The 2022 aerial imagery, you can see the existing dwelling present on the lands. So through this application, the applicant is proposing to construct an unenclosed, uncovered second-story deck attached to the existing dwelling within the footprint of the existing first-story deck. This application does request a reduced front yard setback to facilitate the construction of this deck. The previous property owner did receive provisional approval from the committee in 2020 for a reduced front yard setback to the now existing first story deck through minor variance A2720. That application did not contemplate the construction proposed through this application. That's why you're seeing this application come before the committee. So as mentioned, a reduced front yard setback is requested. The bylaw would require a 20-meter setback as this deck is more than 2 meters above grade. So the applicants are requesting a 17.5 meter setback to the second story deck, whereas 20 meters, as mentioned, would normally be required. Here we have a site plan. The applicant did submit this. Staff just added a bit of clarity so it was easier to see on screen. You can see the existing dwelling located back here. The existing deck does stretch across the entire front of the existing dwelling, whereas the proposed second story deck is only proposed to stretch across approximately half of the dwelling. Given the way that the shoreline is angled here, it does actually increase the setback to this deck compared to the minor variance that was sought previously to the lower level deck. But this measurement here is at 17.5 meters setback that the applicants have requested. Just some elevation drawings here showing the proposed deck. The existing is down here with that second story deck located above it. Just some site photos of the subject property. This is standing at the shoreline looking at the dwelling. You can see the existing main level or first story deck located here. During staff site visit, it was observed that there is a garden shed located within the front yard. The applicant has indicated that that structure has since been removed and has provided a picture here for the committee that you can see the shed has been removed. And then this picture here, just standing on the dock, looking back at the property. I do want to point out to the committee that under the previous approval with the previous minor variance, the property owner was required to enter into a minor variance condition agreement. So the committee would be familiar with those now, seeing a few of them come across the table. Basically, that agreement established the requirement for vegetation protection zone within the front yard. This application before you today would not encroach into that vegetation protection zone as it is located entirely within the footprint of that existing deck. So there would be no disturbance to the VPZ as a result. Additionally, the applicant has indicated that that garden shed has been removed. Obviously, staff would still recommend the inclusion of the recommended provision just to ensure during a site visit before the final approval of the application. So as mentioned, the proposed second story deck would be contained entirely within the footprint and not encroach into that established VPZ on the property. The comments regarding the shed. Additionally, staff did want to point out to the committee that they may wish to consider a condition requiring the use of a transparent railing system to limit visual impacts. The committee previously imposed this condition on the former minor variance. And staff do feel that it would be appropriate to continue to require that. The applicants did indicate on their construction plans that that was already kind of their game plan on that, but just to ensure that that does take place. So for those reasons, planning staff are of the opinion that the application conforms to all applicable policies and does meet the 4 tests as required by the Planning Act. There were no comments or objections received from the building division, clerk's office, or the public works and fire and emergency services departments. And for those reasons, planning staff and our department have no objections to the approval of the application subject to the recommended conditions. which do include that taxes be paid to date, the construction be in substantial compliance with the plan submitted with the application, that the railings be constructed of a transparent material in accordance with the requirements of the Ontario Building Code, and that the accessory structure located within the front yard be relocated or removed from the subject lands in accordance with the terms of the minor variance condition agreement and provisions of the zoning bylaw. That concludes my presentation, but as always, if the committee has any questions, happy to answer.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Does the applicant or their agent have anything further to add to the application? Nope. Okay. For persons present who have either questions or wish to speak in favor or in opposition to the application, please address your questions through me. The applicant may be asked to respond to each party. When commenting, please give your name and address for the minutes. Is there anybody here? Seeing none, I declare the public portion of the meeting closed. Do any members of the committee require further clarification or wish to provide comments on the application? Member Bossy.
Just one quick question. Where's the access point for that deck?
So I'm going to pass that over.
Yeah, through the chair to member Bossy, the stairs for the proposed second story deck would be entirely contained within the footprint of the main level as well.
Member Kish.
So I guess one comment, I did stop by there on the way here, and the shed was moved from the shoreline area over to beside the house. A question through the chair to staff. The recommendation, condition number 3, that the railings be constructed of a transparent material. Do we need to clarify in any way that it still allows for like the black rail on the top with the glass below? Because I've seen ones that are fully transparent, like just glass. I just want to make sure that we're not handcuffing ourselves, or we all understand what we're talking about when we make that recommendation.
Pass that question or comment or question over to staff.
Through the chair, staff are understanding of, you know, if they needed an opaque railing of some sort to contain the glass panels, we can take that clarity from the discussion. If the committee wishes to amend the condition, we can definitely have that discussion, but staff understand that.
Kish.
I guess from my standpoint, it doesn't need to be clarified. I just want to make sure that kind of everybody's on the same page that what it is, just so that people don't understand that they have to have full glass.
Okay. And my only comment would be that I'd be in agreement with that condition. Makes sure and aligns with the previous decision that was already made for an application that was approved for that specific property and for the lower deck. So I think it's probably in the best interest of the homeowner to keep it the same rather than to go different. So I would support that. Member Hiles.
Just because we're all commenting. So through the chair to the applicant, I just want to say thank you for coming to us with this. We've had in the last few weeks a few things that could have been a lot simpler if they would have just came to us and gone through the process just like this in advance. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay, seeing there's no further discussion, I'm going to call for a motion. So I have a motion before us, identify COA 2023-47, moved by member Kish, second by member Bossy, that staff report D23-027 be received, and further that minor variance application identified as A-14-23 be approved, subject to the conditions included as attachment 5 to staff report D23-027. I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor, we are carried. I'm going to call for a motion for adjournment. I have a motion before us, COA 2023-48, moved by member Bossy, second by member Hiles, that the Committee of Adjustment be adjourned at 7:49 p.m. on Tuesday, October 6:49 p.m. Sorry. Yeah, 6:49 p.m. on October 17th, 2023. I'm going to call for vote. All those in favor? We are carried.
It's so dark out there.